All right, guys, welcome to the Onelife Podcast. I've got the pleasure of having Paul with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
He works at a local health food store near my gym. We came across each other probably 12 months ago. Very, very, very knowledgeable. Seems like you lived and breathed health your entire life. You're in your mid-60s, you're in shape, your clarity, your function, you're a stigma of health, in my opinion. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the compliments.
No, you're totally welcome. So with you, I want to touch on what is health? Like, what is health as a whole?
Okay, that's a great place to start. So
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
It's a perfect question because I don't know whether you knew this or not, but one of my mentors could not get an answer to that exact question when he was going to pre-med school. And so he left pre-med school because none of the physicians or PhDs could answer that question to his satisfaction.
Okay. So what is health then?
Well, his definition may be a little different than the way I see it now, but it's still pretty close. His definition would be health is the natural state. Okay. And how he came to that conclusion was that if you look at nature, nature has a program for health that's been built into our DNA. Okay. Now, whether that's there by design, if you're looking at like an intelligent design perspective or from a God perspective or just by the workings of nature, in any case, the DNA in our body knows it's actually technically the wisdom in the DNA.
Okay.
The intelligence in the DNA knows how to exactly make perfect cells every time with some provisions.
Okay.
The provisions are that the essential nutrients for any particular organism, whether it's a human being or a dog or a cat or an animal or a plant or a bacteria, has the nutrient supply that it needs, and it has its nutrients in a bioavailable, usable form. And the second provision is that it's a toxin-free environment that it lives in.
Okay.
So if we expand upon that concept to the physical body that we live in, there are about 55 essential nutrients that orthomolecular science has defined through very strict definitions. And I can give you part of the list of 10 for each one of these nutrients that they have to have in order to be considered essential. And if we have those in the right bioavailable form, in the right ratio with each other, and the right quantity, our DNA knows how to make every other substance and run all the energy and all the functions of our physical reality.
That's when we're technically healthy and we're not getting sick and we're functioning the way we're supposed to.
Well, they'll keep those nutrients
balance.
would keep you healthy if you have healthy DNA and you have healthy functioning.
So what do you say? For the most part, you're born healthy, right? And then environmental, food, different things are gonna change the body and change that outcome. And what you're saying is trying to keep that in balance your entire life. Is that kind of where you're getting at?
Well, there is that perspective. You know, I can go into, when we get to maybe the topic of detoxification, we also can pick up not just perfection from our genetic line, we can also pick up imperfections. So, but what's interesting is that most what we would call illness now, however we want to define illness,
which is
right?
It's an interesting word, isn't it?
Yeah. So, however we want to define that, 97% of it is due to environmental and or social or stress-related or psychological issues.
Like influences.
Only maybe 3% or less is actually due to genetic defects.
Gotcha. Okay. So things are passed on from generation to generation.
But what can come through those generational...
97%.
Yeah.
We're bringing it on ourselves.
Yeah. But it also can come from social conditioning.
What is social conditioning?
Well, just the culture you live in.
Okay.
So some cultures are more prone to certain illnesses than other cultures. Okay. And that could be due to dietary choices and omissions. That could be due to habits of the culture, the way that they actually treat their children. Okay.
Is that also environmental where you live and what part of the world you're in?
It does, because there's even studies that show the kind of water that you drink, depending on what the mineral complex is in the water, can affect your health dramatically.
Gotcha.
And just to give you an example, if a child does not get strong bones built by the time they are early teens, they are prone to have bone issues later in life. They may survive the first 30, 40 years, but when they get into the elderly years, they're more prone to bone issues and osteoporosis, osteopenia than people who had a very strong foundation of their bones being built while they were young.
Okay, and that could just be just by the water you've had.
It could be the water, it could be the food. For example, if you go back a couple of generations, maybe 3 generations for some viewers now, there are farmers who are 100 years old, and they would have maybe what we do not consider a healthy diet or healthy lifestyle now, but they have no bone problems because of the foods that they ate in those times gave them the calcium, the phosphorus, the magnesium, the boron, the strontium, whatever else was needed. And they got out in the sun and they're getting a lot of vitamin D. So their bones are and they're working hard, so their muscles are putting stress on
purpose and not lacking they're not having depression, ADHD.
So these children, as they grew up and now they're in their 80s, 90s, or 100s, they don't have as many bone problems as people now in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Why is that?
Yeah, why is that? I'm guessing one thing's the lack of the quality of the food that we eat today.
There's a lot to that, but and I could sum that up in one general topic is that most people are eating a diet that it has a very deficient level of alkaline elements. Of those 55 essential nutrients that I mentioned, about 22 of them are minerals. Minerals are generally the alkalizing components that keep our body strong, and your body needs those minerals for everything else to run properly, even though they might make up only 3 or 4% of your body weight. The rest of it's made by water and fat, actually, was what our body's mostly made of. But minerals are absolutely critical.
This is interesting stuff, and I'm into this, but it's overwhelming. Never learned for someone who doesn't do any of this. So how do you get someone to understand this at the basic form? Well,
let's go back to kind of where we started. Is that there's about 55 essential building blocks that are needed. I like that, building blocks. And what science is, I'll give you a list of some of the criteria that they looked at. So if you go down to the store and you buy a vitamin product, it's got a bunch of stuff in it, right? So say it's a good quality multivitamin, maybe it's based on food, or maybe you're trying to get it from just a green food mix that you put together yourself, which is sometimes what I do. So I do both. But the point is that how do you know that you have all 55 of the nutrients? Do you have your 2 essential fats? Do you have an enzyme supply to break it down for you? Do you have 8 to 7 essential amino acids, which are the protein groups? Do you have 14 vitamins? Do you have the 22 minerals? Do you have fiber? Do you have light? Do you have oxygen? Do you have water? There's about 55 there if you break it all down.
Interesting.
Are they in the right ratio, right? Did you get enough calcium, compared to your magnesium? Or more important questions, did you get enough magnesium to your calcium? Right?
So so it's
did
not
you
just
get
getting
enough
vitamin in the right balance?
How do you know what the balance should be if you haven't researched it and studied that, right? So there actually are some products out there that, if you had to do it, you could do it on 2 or 3 products if you knew what to get. Right? But most people, they wouldn't know that because they haven't studied it for the years.
No, I mean, I don't think anybody knows that. And I didn't know that until I met you, right? So, gotcha.
So like I was telling you earlier, as you were kind of priming me for the evening, is like people come into the store. I've worked in health food stores off and on, and I've also given a lot of staff trainings because I've been a rep for like 25 years. I do more than one occupation. And in staff trainings, we have to train the staff because they're the ones that eventually teach the customers about nutrition. Because like, again, one of my main teachers, he said, in America, primary care is not practiced in the doctor's office.
What does that mean?
Well, primary care, if you think about it, is when you get a cut or a bruise, or if you have a rash, you know, you could go to the trauma center, but that's kind of mediocre. They're going to go go to the pharmacy, right? But the pharmacy doesn't practice, you know, primary care. If you want primary care and you don't have a good alternative therapist or a friend or physician,
it's a primary care prevention, right?
You go to the health food store in America.
We talked about this yesterday, and there's nothing on prevention out there, is there?
Not much.
It's all, I mean, apart from like the rare people like yourself, it's all about, hey, I've got this, how do I mask it or treat it? Now I've got it. There's nothing on how do I avoid this for the rest. How do I avoid getting this full stop?
Yeah.
Diabetes, heart disease, the list is endless.
Yeah, well, let's look at, there's 4 things that kill 70% or more of Americans prematurely.
Okay.
Do you know what the 4 things are?
I'm guessing diabetes, heart
That's
disease.
one of the 4. That's the top one. Yeah.
Heart attacks, heart disease.
That's part of cardiovascular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stroke. Would that be?
That's part of cardiovascular.
And I know the other one because it was malfunction in operations and stuff, wasn't it?
It is. It's actually the third leading cause of death in America.
That's scary.
For decades. And if this is in medical journals.
And that's today.
And it varies. It's going on for decades. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody says anything about it. They're all concerned about all these other things that cause death. But we'll look at the medical journals. 150,000 people, up to 600,000 people a year die prematurely because of medical malpractice, wrong surgeries performed in the wrong place or the wrong time.
That's scary.
That stuff that's left. I'm telling you, not to scare you from going to doctor, I'm telling you, when you get a serious treatment, make sure you know who's doing the surgery and what's being done.
And they know what
what's supposed to be done, right?
That's scary, isn't it?
You know, interview your physician and your surgeon before you get the treatment.
Wow.
Find out what's happening.
What made you find that information? Like, is it just you doing your diligence and reading?
Study. You know,
just came across
it's if you're actually, a lot of it came from reading doctors who have written books about nutrition who refer to this information.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, it's not like they're not going to promote it for obvious reasons, but it could be the wrong medication given, or they didn't screen the person correctly, and you know, maybe the person needed one medication that got too high of a dose, right?
Gotcha.
Or you know, it could be a lot of different things.
That's crazy.
But people need to take responsibility for their own health. That's the bottom line.
Right? Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
For anything in their life.
Well,
health being the number one thing.
But you know, we're kind of like, you know, this isn't like a car that when something's broken, you go in and, you know, mechanic can fix it.
Yeah.
And then you get a new part and the car's going to be functional for again. Our physiology is vastly dependent, not just on the foods and the substances that we ingest and drink and what we breathe, but also on the way we think and the way that we feel. Those actually are, and then there's a spiritual component as well. And then, like we talked about earlier, what we bring in from the genetic side, right? So all of these components together in the mix have an effect on our overall health.
You're even talking about like a hypochondriac, right? If you think you're going to get sick and you think you're going to get ill, you whatever your mind kind of like perceives, your body kind of follows with, doesn't it? Is that kind of what you're getting at as far as like the way you think? Like,
well, I think that's probably the most important, other than the spiritual life force that flows through us.
The positivity, right?
Is learning. Well, it's very in depth, and actually I'm reading quite a bit about it more and more now. I studied it way back before I even got into nutrition, back in my teenage years, because I was in sales back then. Okay. And I was like learning to do things that other kids were not learning to do. And I would go on one side of the street and sell, and another kid would go on the other side of the street And pretty soon I'm trying to figure out how come I'm making sales and he's not making sales or she's not making sales, right? And why is it some kids are outselling me? What is the component here, right? And so eventually you learn that your mind has a big influence.
Huge.
And maybe it's the biggest influence on everything else.
On everything in life, right?
So it's also influencing your physiology to a very great degree. And you can go into, well, let's go to I'll pick on the medications again, right?
There's so many things, right?
You pick on the medications again. Why is it that medications have to have like a 30% bias for the placebo effect? It didn't used to be that high. Why is it now like, up to 30% in some cases? It's because people want to get better, and even if they're given something that's inert, they get better. Why is that?
Gotcha. The mental side.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
You can call, well, if the placebo effect is that effective for some things, we ought to be looking into that.
Because I get what you're getting at.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Continue. No, but I understand.
But why call it?
Why
call it a placebo effect?
If you can take a sugar pill and you can will yourself into getting better.
Why you need the pill?
Yeah, that's
right? Yeah. Let's take the.
So how does someone address that?
Let's take the same application over to that's an allopathic approach. Allopathic would be, what doctors are, basically trained in surgery and drugs and medications, and they're taught radiation and chemotherapy. They're very well schooled in it. It's becoming more refined and better than it ever was before, and they save thousands of people's lives, right? And people need that when they're in trauma. And my point is that we need an integrated system. And one of the best places to find that is probably a term that you may or may not be familiar with, but there are biological dentists and there are functional doctors who may not treat with those methods as their primary care. Their primary care for the person who comes to see them might be, looking at their diet or looking at their lifestyle, looking at other things. If you go to an alternative practitioner, you may get a whole different set of questions than what you would find than if you went into a primary care or general physician, right?
Should that start with children?
Well, I think it should.
Ideally, right?
Listen, I had doctors that made house calls when I was a child. I remember the doctor coming in when I was sick and examining me in the house where we lived more than once, right? And it was common. We had a couple of doctors that were general practitioners in the small town that I lived in, and they made house calls. It was normal. That was accepted.
And that information that you're talking about and that guidance should start at early age.
Yeah.
So it's not just, now I've got diabetes, now what do I do? It's like, how do I prevent this? Which is totally preventable. Type 2 diabetes, totally preventable.
Well, I think it is. There are, type 1 is going to be more hard to deal with.
I mean, you're born with it, right?
It can be dealt with to a great degree.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a medical doctor. He's also one of the best practitioners in the world of holistic medicine named Gabriel Cousins. And he has a 30-day protocol for that issue that you just talked about.
Okay.
And he puts you on that program. Now, if you don't stick with it, you may not get the same results, or maybe some people it takes 45 or 60 days.
Yeah.
The point is, if you stick with this program, you will get the results. But it's not necessarily for everybody, right? Yeah.
Just like any program. If you actually do it, it's like any diet. If you do it properly, you'll get the results.
Yeah.
But everybody likes to make excuses and fluff.
But let's talk to the the 4 things that kill most people prematurely.
Yeah. What were they?
The one that we didn't talk about. The number 2 killer is cancer. Okay.
Which seems to be getting more and more common every day, right?
Well, yeah. It would have been unheard of 40 years ago or 45 years ago when I was a kid to say that half of the population can expect to die from cancer. That would be like, well, we better do something about it, right? Now it's like, well, this,
and that's a fact, right? It's like
in some of them,
I saw a thing recently. It's like 50% of males have cancer in their lifetime, and 1 out of 3 females will have cancer in their lifetime, which is so scary.
Here's the thing, is that if what I said earlier is correct, and I believe it is, and I think it's backed up by research, that most of these illnesses are preventable by taking control of your diet and lifestyle. Now, if you eat a perfect diet, but you have a really bad attitude, you're not going to get the same results as if you have your attitude working with you and your feelings working with you. Right.
But if you have a good diet, your attitude probably is going to be more positive anyway, because you're going to feel better and function better. It's kind of like a win-win. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I was fortunate when I was in high school as a senior in one of the classes, which I didn't really care for, but they gave us an assignment for our term paper. We could write a term paper following their protocol on anything that we wanted to write it on. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. It's not going to be on what the class is about, but I started doing my research, and I was thinking about maybe going into being a doctor. So pre-med was an option for me to, if I went to college, that would have been a course of study. But I was very interested in this mind thing, because I was like, why is it that some teams win all the time, even if they don't have the best talent, for example, right? Or that some guys and gals are just winners, right? Yeah. And what is it that makes them successful? What is their secret? I wanted to know more about that. And so that comes back to the mind, and I'm, I was working a job where my attitude had a big deal towards success. And so I wrote a term paper on hypnosis to control pain. That was the topic of the paper. And while I was doing my research, I went down to the public library, and I happened to find a book that wasn't really exactly on that topic. I hadn't even refined my topics at that point. I was just doing general research. But I was enthralled with this book. And so I actually went down and ordered the book at a bookstore in about a couple of years. And in the book, it has all these rules of the mind and rules of the spirit, and how what you just talked about, how the minds affect the feeling, which affects the physiology, and there's all these biofeedback loops. It didn't talk about biofeedback in the book really, but they were in there as functions of the mind and functions of our own innate spirituality.
Okay.
Yeah. And
that's
so
very interesting.
Yeah. So that's still one of my favorite books. And I get lost.
What was the book called?
The book is called The Act of Will.
Spot on, right? Yeah. Okay, so getting back into the base of health.
Okay.
You talked about what's the next step. So I know you say what's essential, but has it got to be supplementation? Can we do it through food? If we do it through food, how is it done?
Okay. So what I still do for my staff, or for customers, and in this case for this podcast, is I have developed, in conjunction with research with other individuals and scientists and researchers, and it's a top 10 nutritional guidelines.
Top 10. I like this. Okay. I'm excited for this.
So now there's subcategories under there, because there's always new things being developed. Yep. Not all of them you would say necessarily are having to do with what you eat or what you ingest, but one of them is, let's say, an energetic protocol. So you need to be doing something to reduce stress. It's absolutely critical in our society today to have some kind of a stress reduction program. It could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be athletic events of some kind that aren't necessarily competitive. I love to hike and walk. That's one way that I de-stress.
Why now? Why stress? I feel like stress is more relevant than, it's more prevalent than ever, right? Why we stress? What's changed?
So there's a book called Stress Without Distress by Hans Selye, one of the primary researchers on it, way back when.
Yep.
Okay. And it wasn't even his first book, but it was one that I happened to have as a textbook in one of my college courses. After I shifted around and someone decided that I wanted to do my own thing and not just, what I was programmed to do. Okay. So it was one of 3 texts in a psychology of consciousness class that I took. And what it comes down to is that stress is not necessarily bad. Stress can actually be what makes you thrive.
Okay.
But distress is the problem.
What's distress mean?
Distress means when the stress is chronic and never goes away.
Gotcha.
And you've got
no outlet.
It becomes a distress because your cells don't have the opportunity to go into what would be called biocosmic orgasm function. And that function is critical for our survival.
And that's why
that function has to do with tension and charge and then discharge and relaxation.
Okay.
And then the cycle repeats.
So that's why you're stressing
Yeah, and when that cycle is not allowed to cycle, and it always stays on either the charge mode or on the discharge mode or on the tension mode, the cycle is screwed up.
Okay.
And you can't function. And your life will go haywire if you don't de-stress.
Stress is one of the worst things possible for your
distress
body.
Is the problem. We have to get our terminology right.
Yeah, distress.
Yeah. Stress is not bad. Distress is the problem.
Okay.
So there's a distinction people can use right there. What's the difference between stress and distress in your life, right? Because what might be a stressor for you is a stressor for me. But somebody else, it might be distress.
Interesting.
So different. Like an athlete. They push the limits, right? They put themselves under massive stress and then they adapt, their body adapts. Then they go to higher levels of stress, right? So in yoga,
that's a good thing.
My teacher taught us, you need to learn the distinction between, how did she put it? Between discomfort and pain.
Okay.
So you want to push through the discomfort. Not exactly the way she taught it, but
I know where you had it here. Yeah.
You got to learn even to push through the pain and not get to injury. Okay? That's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah.
You need to learn the difference between what pain is and what causes injury. Now that's a fine line if you're really pushing the limits and you're an athlete.
So you're relating that back to stress and distress.
Yeah, because it's the same thing.
That balance.
On a physical function level. And the thing is when you ramp up your energetic levels and then you put some good nutrition with it and you put my top 10 nutritional guidelines with it, you're going to go to a higher level of performance.
Interesting. So
they give you one supplement. They have examples of going 12 to 48% increase in performance levels. It's not a banned substance. If you're an athlete and you're using that, are you going to tell your competition?
No, probably not.
Right. So the idea of a celebrity endorsement doesn't work very well all the time.
Interesting.
Right.
So is like stress, distress, and like your number one on your list of 10? Is that the first thing? Or
the first thing is actually a spiritual connection. Okay. Because I think we need to tune in to the spirit. Run
me through like I guess from the most important, I guess they're all important as each other, but what would you put as number one? And
number one is, I think you need, however you relate to, if you're a Qigong master, you relate to the earth, which is the all-inclusive, the spirit, or the Wu Qi. You're going to tune in to the spirit. Tuned into the spirit. If you're a religious person, tune into the God that you know that's a beneficial God, okay? If you're an atheist, find a way to tune into nature. You need to find that connection with the universe.
Okay.
That's number one.
Why is that?
Because that's what made you. That's what made me.
Okay.
That's what made us all.
So it's kind of like getting grounded in a way.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What follows after that? What's your number two?
Probably number two is the energetic component, because we need to learn through whether it's Qigong or Tai Chi or yoga, we need to harmonize our energies, to control our energies, and to make us a functional being, not only within, but in our relationships. Okay? And those disciplines will lead you in those directions so that you can function individually, collectively, and universally.
Can you give me some more depth on that?
Sure. What you can do individually is develop your physicality. You can also develop your mentality. But if you never take it beyond your own little sphere of influence, how are you going to help your friend who comes to you, or your neighbor, or society as a whole, right? You find a way to expand that to a small group, and then maybe expand that into a bigger group. And with the internet now, you can take it to the world. If the world's willing to listen, the world can find whatever it wants, right?
Okay.
And different groups are forming that are going in this direction because they want not just to heal themselves, but to heal the planet. The planet is not healthy either. The planet needs help as well.
Starting with yourself.
Yeah.
And then the small surroundings around you, and then
right.
That's interesting. Because if you don't help yourself, it's hard to help others.
So how can we think about going to other worlds when our planet isn't healthy? I think our first responsibility would be to heal our planet, make it healthy. And then we become an example for whatever else is out there.
Yep.
Right? And also we're stronger in case of something that may not be so friendly, that may be out there or may not be.
Interesting.
Right? So if we're more health oriented here and more in balance, it comes back to the principle of balance, right? All these disciplines are going to teach you about balance, right? But the balance is internal. The balance is between you and your environment. And within your environment, there's the social and there's the universal.
Okay. Very interesting. Number 3 on your list.
Now we're going to get into probably digestion. Because I can give you the best live, raw, organic, sun-ripened, local grown diet, and maybe you're creating it, growing in your own garden, right? And I can tell you what the foods are to eat and to get you in the right ratio and tune you in if you're an athlete. I help you get to whatever performance level you want to get to.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of these things for people before. But if your digestion is not working correctly, you will not get the maximum value.
Digestion meaning gut health, correct?
Gut health. The microbiome, the scientists are telling us. Yeah.
I feel like this is overlooked.
Stop. They're just learning about how extensive it is right now. But let me go into the numbers. All right, let's take the numbers. How many cells do you have in your body?
I have no idea.
Well, depending on who you listen to, it's somewhere between 60 and 100 trillion cells that make up the tissues and all the organs and all the cells. There's how many cells, right? 60 to 100 trillion. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Right? You think so? Okay. So let's say in your microbiome, you just take one little section of your intestinal tract. You have tens of trillions of microorganisms that live in just one little section. Now, how long is it?
Just in your tummy.
Yeah. You have a tube. So they're getting little technical now, but we have a space we live in. We think it's ours, right?
Yeah.
All right. So in reality, we have a hole that goes from the mouth through the other end that's technically not part of your physical body.
Okay.
It's a hole. It's a tube. It's about maybe 36 or 40 feet long, right?
Yeah.
The intestinal tract is a long, wound up tube in our gut, right? And so that tube is lined with bacteria and other microorganisms. Now, they could be beneficial or they may not be so beneficial.
Okay.
But the health of that makes for a healthy individual person.
Very interesting.
Right? Because
no matter how well you
they outnumber the cells in your body by a factor of, depending on who you listen to, a factor of 10 to 100 to 1.
Wow. Gotcha.
Okay. If you have that many tens of trillions of cells in just one little section of your intestinal tract, you take the whole intestinal tract, you have bacteria living in your mouth. You have bacteria in your esophagus, in your stomach, in your small intestine, and in your large intestine.
Okay.
Now, if you eat food, there's a big extraction process that needs to take place before a nutrient that we've talked about, one of the top 55 essential nutrients, and plus there's thousands of other beneficial nutrients as well, that is going to end up as part of the structure in your body. It has to pass through this tube somewhere.
Gotcha.
Right?
So it needs to be absorbed.
Yeah, but it isn't just absorption. There's 6 phases that I've put kind of outlined.
You just got layers after layers for me. That's awesome.
You know, people come ask me for questions. I gotta have an answer.
This is great.
Right.
So what are the 6?
So the first is to actually make the correct food choices and correctly combine and prepare the food.
Okay.
All right. So if you go out and you say, I need some calcium, and you pick up a rock, it's the wrong form.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you go out and you find the right plant, say you cut some grass, well, it's close, but it needs to be maybe wheatgrass or barley grass or oat grass.
Okay.
Right. And maybe you do it a next step, you put it through a juicer and you extract the juice out of it. Right. Well, that's great. Now you've got it in a bioavailable form and it's rich in all these nutrients.
Okay.
Okay. So now you drink it, goes in your body. That's the second step. So you identify it, you prepare it correctly. Now it goes in your body. So now what happens? Your body has to take it and what we would call digest it. It's exposed to the mouth, has saliva. That saliva is going to help break down sugars and starches. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the old adage of chew your juice and drink your food makes a lot of sense.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, well, a lot of people need to be paying attention to that. That's very important.
That's interesting.
Drink your food and chew your juice.
Interesting.
So you make a juice, don't just swallow it, taste it. Swish it around in your mouth. Let your enzymes work on it. Okay, change the enzyme structure in your mouth. That chlorophyll-rich food that we just talked about will actually detoxify your mouth.
Interesting.
Okay, you swallow it down. Okay, now the nutrients are in your gut, but you have a different pH in your stomach, and this is for one of the companies I work with now, is absolutely critical that the stomach acid breaks down your food correctly, because that's where the minerals are digested primarily. You don't have an enzyme in your body basically for breaking down enzymes. The minerals that you eat from foods a lot of times are not in an ionic form, which is what your body prefers.
Okay.
They're in a compound form. Calcium citrate, calcium gluconate, magnesium bonded to phosphate or something, right? That the bonds need to be broken apart. That takes place in the stomach acid.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So the gut acid gets weaker as people get older. That's what the research shows.
Okay.
Right.
And I'm sure poor diet and things make it weaker too. Or...
They do. Stress is a big one because you have distress.
Yeah.
It shuts down your digestive tract.
Okay.
Now you've eaten food, but it's not breaking down.
Interesting. Or you're taking supplements, or you're eating the perfect food, but it's...
Or you ate the right combination.
It
or you took an antacid afterwards and that neutralized your stomach acid.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So what do? Well, the traditional herbalists, 100 years ago, they didn't have pills and bottles like we do now, for the most part. They give people herbal bitters or tinctures or remedies, right? Or they send them out to, collect herbs. Herbalists, the shaman, the physicians of the day, they gave people what were called herbal bitters. Herbal bitters turn on your digestive fire.
Okay.
They turn on the spleen and the pancreas juices and the small intestinal juices and the stomach acid and the bile from the liver.
So it's prepping everything to function the way it's
supposed
to.
And it helps the organs create more of those juices to break down these foods.
It's kind of like lubricating inside of your body with the right.
Very much so.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So now you're able to absorb.
Here's your minerals being digested now in the stomach.
Okay.
Well, again, some of them can actually be absorbed through the stomach lining. If it's not, now if you're just eating the plants, it's still bound up by the plant fiber. That's why the juice or the smoothie is a preferred way to get your nutrients in your body for the most part, right?
Okay.
Now the pH there, what do you think the pH is optimally in the stomach?
I have no idea. 1.
Yeah. What's the pH scale? What does it run from?
I don't.
It's 1 to 14.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. 14 is very, very alkaline. Like it's called basic. You have basic substance, it'll burn you. Just like 1 pH battery acid will burn you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so why don't people say, well, that can't be true because if I had 1 pH in my stomach, I'd burn up. Well, not true, because you have a lining in your stomach that protects you.
Okay. But it's not doing any good in there.
Well, what happens if you get an ulcer?
Okay.
You've got a strong acid in your stomach. All of a sudden, the lining is worn away down. It's painful. It's because your stomach acid, which is actually working, is burning.
So it's eating itself in a way, right?
Is not there to protect the rest of your stomach.
Okay.
So what do you find? Well, you need the right remedy that can both help your stomach acid be to the right level and help restore your stomach lining.
So what is that? What does that?
Well, one of the companies I work with is an aloe company, and we have some herbal bitters that actually we have great results with those kinds of issues.
So the aloe herbal bitters is kind of doing it all.
If it's the right kind and the right potency and the right strength, you can get those results.
Right. So it's kind of doing everything it needs.
99% of most of the aloes out there will soothe things, but they won't necessarily restore the proper function.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very
so
interesting.
there's a real difference in supplements as well as plants, right? Buying the rock isn't going to get you, the calcium and the other minerals you need, but buying the right plants and getting organic certification so there are not pesticides on them, and then putting them in the body in the correct form, juicing or salads or smoothies, is going to increase your percentage of uptake dramatically.
That's
and then having your digestion work properly. We've only got through stage 3. It has to go in through the microbiome. People mostly think of it, and most of it resides in your small intestinal tract and your large intestine. But most of the acidophilus varieties live in the small intestine, and the pH changes now and goes more toward the alkaline scale. Because now the bile acids are coming in from the liver.
Okay.
And they're breaking down these, what was pre-digested in the stomach is now getting really digested, and this is where most of the nutrition is absorbed in the small intestine.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah. This is where most
deep
nutrition
stuff, right? Isn't it?
This is where most nutrition needs to be absorbed, is in the small intestine.
Okay. This is
the large intestine becomes literally more like a juice extractor and pulling out the water, and it's a reserve water supply for us. So people have dry stools, they're dehydrated.
Okay.
For the most part, that's what happens. So is people don't drink the right kind of water, they drink at the wrong time, they're drinking alkaline water, they're neutralizing their stomach acids. People need training on how to eat and how to drink. We used to get this training in junior high school. We had a health class that taught us things like this.
Okay.
Or to some level. But people need this information. If you drink alkaline water, drink it in between meals. Okay? Don't neutralize your stomach acid. It's very important for your stomach acid to work correctly, for you to have proper digestion, because it also helps to break down fibers and proteins and fats. So now they're pre-digested in the stomach, they get into the small intestine, and now not only do the digestive juices from the bile and the liver, the pancreas is excreting its enzymes, and the food's broken down. They call it a chyme or a chyme, and that paste is made. Okay, that paste is what nourishes all these 100 trillion cells of your body, and it has to get absorbed through your villi in the intestinal tract, and then it has to get picked up by the bloodstream and or the lymphatic system, and then the fourth phase is transportation. It has to be transported through the body to all the individual cells.
Okay.
And then the cells have a membrane around them. All cells have a membrane made of fatty acids. Those fatty acids have to allow, and the cellular intelligence within each cell has to allow the nutrients to be absorbed. And they're signaling with each other all the time to allow that to take place. And they have to release toxins. Now we have the reverse process. So after you haven't eaten, like you're eating a very interesting protocol with not eating for large numbers of hours. And that's becoming more and more popular with intermittent fasting and other protocols. And fasters do it, they might not eat for a day or 3 days or several days. And I've done a number of fasts myself, and that's good for the body to take breaks. But it needs to be done under supervision if you do longer than 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what happens is those toxins get released and they have to work their way out of the body through one of 4 places.
Gotcha.
Lungs, urinary tract, skin, and bowels. Those are your 4 emunctory organs, right? But the liver and the kidneys are the big processing plants, and they help to detoxify things, because some toxins that have been stored in your body, maybe from when you were an infant, or maybe even that your mother picked up when you were, just a fetus, they could still be residing somewhere in your tissues. So these organs may be overwhelmed with toxins as they start to come out. That's why you should do half a day fast before you do a full day fast, before you do a 3-day fast, before you do 7,
absolutely.
Before you do 10, before you do 40, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe you learn to do just drink on green juices for a while, or just do a salad only diet for a while, or you just there's a lot of protocols that are out there that, if they're done correctly, can help your body detoxify and then get to the level where you can actually do extended fasts.
So it's fair to say that most people aren't absorbing most of the food. Like, people have eaten bad for a long time.
It always depends on the person. Young people are going to absorb. Let's go back to the age related.
Okay.
Generally speaking, young people have very strong digestive systems.
And is that because less damage has been done as well over the years?
Well, it's more part of our biological program, I would say, because they found like the richest place of enzymes in the world they found is in an infant's mouth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they're exposed to so many things, and the child has to survive. So they have a huge supply of enzymes in their mouth. It detoxifies everything. Okay. Right? So enzymes can be an absolutely critical component as we get older. The idea that we just get enough from our food is a fallacy. Even if you're eating the best live, raw, organic, sun-ripened live diet, there's only a small percentage of enzymes in those live foods that will be available for your body, because most of those enzymes will be used to break down the food itself. Okay. You need to rebuild your bank account literally with an enzyme supply. And that's where systemic enzymes come in and digestive enzymes come in, because they can take the burden off from your physiology and take a lot of this workload and do it very efficiently, and then help you survive.
This is overwhelming stuff, isn't it? I can see why you try to contain it.
In the top 10 nutritional guidelines, we've got to number 3, right, is digestion. But within digestion, there's 7 components. Yeah, right?
There's layer after
layer. So
the
first one we talked about, an herbal bitter. We're talking about an enzyme now. Yeah. And the probiotics are definitely a big deal, but you need to get the right kind, because most of them will be wiped out by your stomach acid, or even more will be wiped out by your bile acids. You need to know which ones will survive that.
Very interesting.
Right? And you can enteric and coat the capsule, but it still may not survive. So how do you get the right foods, right? How do you get the right probiotics? Yeah. If you just eat fermented foods, the potencies aren't there. You can eat kimchi and sauerkraut, but they don't have the potency that's in one little capsule of the right kind of a probiotic. Yeah. We can talk about a postbiotic. A postbiotic is like 9 pounds of yogurt if you take the right one in one little sachet. Yeah. Right? That'll do a lot for restoring your microbiome. Most people are just starting to hear about that in America. I have the fortune of working with some companies that can supply it to people. And that really straightens out your digestive tract. Okay. And it's been available for 2,500 years, because it goes back to an ancient Buddhist text that the Japanese deciphered in the early 1900s and created what we now call bioferment extracts. And we now have them available, and they'd be known in the West now more as what we call postbiotics.
What is next on the list?
All right, so we had, quick review, we had the de-stressing program, and we had a spiritual connection, and we had focus on digestion, and we're into talking about the microbiome with prebiotics and probiotics and postbiotics. Okay. Right. So prebiotics are pretty simple. They're fibers. They're what the probiotics live on. They live on something. We have a symbiosis. We have a symbiotic relationship between our microbiome and our actual physiology. Our physical structure with our 100 trillion cells has a symbiotic relationship with those hundreds of trillions of living organisms that live within our gut, from our mouth all the way through the other end. Mm-hmm. So if that symbiosis is going on well, we're pretty much healthy.
Okay.
Scientists are saying depending on who you listen to, 50 to 80% of your immune function as a physical being is dependent upon your microbiome.
Interesting.
So you dramatically influence your immune function by what you eat and what you drink and what stress level you may or may not have.
Okay.
Or what distress level hopefully you don't have.
But no one will teach you that stuff, right?
Yeah, well, actually there's a lot of people that are, but now that people are learning about it because you're making it, it available to people, they can go search out these words and they can find practitioners who specialize in all these different fields. Okay? And functional doctors specialize in this, and chiropractors have been teaching it for decades. And the biological dentists are telling people, how to replace their mercury fillings correctly, right? And there are some people that claim to be able to regrow teeth. Well, I want to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, here's the picture: is that we can do all these things to give our body a better chance to live for a long life. But that's only half of the equation. The other half is that it isn't about just living a long life. It's about the quality of life.
100%.
Yeah.
I preach that all the time.
Yeah. So the quality of life will be better if your immune system is working better, because you're less likely to get ill. Right?
Full stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other things on the list for digestion would be, addition to the proper food combining and the food choices and the digestive enzymes, which, by the way, they need to be in what we call a full spectrum form that could break down proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and fiber. Okay. So our microbiome loves fiber. So you want to have the right kind of fiber as well. And that also becomes a prebiotic. So fibers are prebiotics. But the balance between the fibers, between soluble and insoluble, is variable depending on the individual and their age and what their needs are. And so there's a multitude of products that people can learn to dial into to find the right one that works for them.
Okay.
And then we've pretty much covered there's one, I'll lead into the next one, which would be what we call an essential fatty acid blend, because all nutrients, almost all of the 55, are fat soluble.
Okay.
A few are water soluble.
What does fat soluble mean?
Well, if you take a substance and you drop it in water, and you take the same identical substance and drop it in oil, some things will dissolve in the water and some things will dissolve in the oil.
That's a good way of explaining it.
Okay.
That's what not.
So some things will dissolve in both.
Yeah.
What we want to do is provide the body with the best opportunity that we can give it to absorb these nutrients that we've spent time and energy and money acquiring, and then preparing correctly for ourselves or our family or our friends or a restaurant for providing for the public. And the way to do that is to eat an oil base with your salad. Okay. There's a reason for that. If you get a salad dressing that there's no oil in it, it may taste good, but it's not going to solve the problem of helping you absorb more of the nutrients from the salad. You need the oil to help break down the food, because most of those nutrients are fat soluble. And
the problem is everyone's scared of fat these days, right? Yeah. Because of what?
I had the fortune of working with a mentor I mentioned earlier, Udo Erasmus, and he's still someone I talk to occasionally. But I got really extensive training on the oils, and he says it's the most important part of nutrition to get correct. It's the least understood part of nutrition.
Yep.
And the least well understood by the public, and it's the most misrepresented to a very great degree.
That being a very good way of explaining it.
So, we'll break it down. And I thought about this. I have never explained it exactly this way before, but I thought, well, what's the simplest way to explain it? And so I'm going to give a new approach to you.
Okay.
So, he wrote the book Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. But pretty much tells half of the story, because he got poisoned by pesticides.
Yep.
I'll let him tell his own story. But basically, the doctors told him that he could look forward to getting cancer and dying at a young age. Okay, so he's 80 now, and he's pretty healthy, and he's teaching courses, and it'd be wise for people I'll give a plug for him to.
Yeah,
he's got a certified course that people can learn from. You want to learn about fats, go learn from Udo Erasmus.
Okay.
He'll guide you in the right direction. Okay? So it isn't just that there's bad fats and good fats. Then the title says it. Fats that kill. Okay? Because they are more toxic to your cells than almost any other substance. And he says the most definitive relationship between the increase in cancer and all other factors combined in the last 100 years is to look at the increase in the use of cooking oils.
Okay, that's very heavy.
Because during his research, he's reading about an essential nutrient, omega-6, that science says your cells have to survive. It's one of the top 55 nutrients. You will die without, if you go long enough without it, you will die.
Yeah.
You'll get symptoms that develop before you die. They will get worse with time until you die. But if you bring in the proper level, in the proper bioavailable form, those symptoms will be reversed. Because that's these are criteria for essential nutrient. These criteria apply to all essential nutrients. If you're omega-3 deficient, you have to bring in the omega-3 essential fatty acid, not the omega-6 or not some other fat, to solve the omega-3 deficiency symptoms. And that's what we have that's very widespread in society today, is omega-3 deficiency. Well, he created a product that solves the problem of both 3 and 6. He calls it Udo's oil.
Udo's oil, which I use.
You can take one oil, you get all the fats you need, you take it in the right quantity, which most people do not, but you need to build up to about a tablespoon to 50 pounds body weight. And then if you want to stay on your low-fat diet, eliminate all the other fats from your diet.
Okay.
Because now your predominant fats are the two that are the essential. All the other fats can be made from those by your physiology, including the DHA and the EPA and the GLA, right, which are derivatives. Technically, they're not essential, right?
Your cooking oils, why are they so bad? What's gone wrong there? What's changed?
The first thing is that most of the things that people use to cook in oil have already been cooked.
Okay.
You buy an oil off the shelf.
The way it's being processed.
Most likely, unless it's an extra virgin olive oil, and even then it may have been cut with some other oil. You really need to know who you buy oil from.
Okay.
Companies. You want glass packaging. You want
glass packaging.
Dark color.
Okay.
You want organic certification. Maybe you call the company and ask them what temperature that they use to process the oil.
Really?
If they're not willing to tell you, call another company. Extra virgin olive oil actually supposedly has a legal definition behind it. The word's legal, extra virgin. I don't think any of the other extra virgin for other oils like coconut or whatever have that legal standing. So you need to find out. Manufacturers can use whatever they want. You can call something cold pressed. It may not be the same as what some other company calls cold pressed or expeller pressed.
That's the problem in America, right? It's so
wishy-washy. It's a worldwide problem.
It's a worldwide.
It's not just America. And it's a standards problem. The companies came together, they couldn't agree on standards, so now we're back to the same problem.
Okay.
The responsibility is on the end user in this case.
Gotcha.
So
just off the top of your head, what are the bad oils? What do we
The bad oils are the processed oils.
So what are they? Sunflower?
Now we're back to what I was going to tell you before. The fats that kill are the processed oils.
Okay.
Because in his research, after 6 years of research and writing a book, and he came to the conclusion it wasn't the omega-6 that was causing the cancer. It was the damage done to the omega-6 molecule by processing.
Okay.
That was the problem.
That's interesting.
The damage done to the oils is where the problem is. It isn't the oils themselves. The same thing applies to a lot of oils that people demonize a particular oil, let's say canola oil.
Well, so you're saying it's not necessarily bad, it's the way it's being made.
It's the way it's made. Now, if your canola oil is damaged by processing, the same way that some coconut oil is damaged by processing, you have the same problem.
So canola oil could actually be good if it was processed the right way.
I've had wonderfully tasting canola oil.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
safely made,
you think this is
correctly.
good, this is bad, but you never think about the base of where it comes from.
It's generally really not the seed that's the problem. It's how it's treated after or how it's pressed into an oil.
Nobody talks about this stuff.
Well, Udo's been talking about it for 35 years or so.
So that's what makes that.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, I can get him on your podcast if you want.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
Okay. So the point is that that's part of the equation. Okay. So the other part of the equation is, I know I don't want the bad oils, and I know to avoid oils. So people that are actually doing what doctors are telling to do, which is doing the low-fat and no-fat diets, they're doing about 75% of the correct thing because they generally don't know where to find the good oils.
Okay.
Okay. The problem is that if you take extra virgin olive oil and you eat avocados and you eat your nuts and seeds raw and put your own spices and salt on them, and don't eat them roasted because that damages the molecules just like any cooking process does.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're eating your raw nuts and seeds and doing your coconut oil, from the fresh coconut, or making it, or you got it from a company that has a standard that you consider correct, that's extra virgin. Same thing with olive oil. Most of these oils, however, don't meet those standards. Call the company, find out, ask them the question, what's the highest temperature the oil is exposed to?
What is the temperature?
If it's over 165 degrees, it's going to be damaging the oil. That's Fahrenheit, not centigrade.
Okay.
You'd specify, make them specify.
165 degrees.
Don't tell them. Ask them the question, what's the temperature? Make them tell you. And if they say 165 or 170, ask them, is that centigrade or is that Fahrenheit? Don't tell them, ask them.
Interesting.
Find out what they say. If they're a reputable company producing a reputable, good quality oil, they'll be happy to tell you.
Yeah, because that's, okay.
Okay?
So that's the standard.
Right.
Very interesting.
There you go. Okay, so now I have mine. I have my source. I can get my oils. I eat a lot of oils. I eat a high omega-6 diet. I eat a lot of omega-6s, a lot of omega-3s. Okay, I eat a lot of omega-9s, right? Because I'm doing what the research says, which is that as we get older, we need to eat less calories and we need to eat less sugar. So if we're going to replace our sugar with fuel, where do we get the fuel from? If we eat too much protein, it acidifies the body and causes inflammation. How many old bodybuilders do you know? Yeah,
that's a good point.
They eat too much protein.
Yeah.
They acidify their body. They don't know what to do, right? And it's a big, it isn't about just the protein. It's about what's your muscle made out of. Your muscle's made of what?
I don't know.
It's made of more fat than it is protein.
Is it really?
Your body weight for most people is 14-15% for men if it's healthy. They can push it lower, but that's not necessarily healthy long term. For women, it'd be 18 to 20% body fat.
Okay.
Protein.
I'm 14.
Yeah.
So right where I need to
be. So what's body weight by protein?
My body weight?
Yeah. How much of it's healthy individuals? 12%.
How's it really?
Yeah. You're made of more fat than you are protein.
Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when you eat protein, put some of the greens in it. Put some alkalizing greens with it, which is one of the components of the top 10 nutritional guidelines. Get a green food powder or that's full of greens because they alkalize the proteins, and put it in your shake every day or do it 2 or 3 times with your proteins because very, very important to get those minerals.
Gotcha.
Alkalize your protein. Whether it's plant or whether it's animal-based, doesn't matter. The protein is acidifying, especially if you eat a lot of it, if you're a bodybuilder. So you need alkalizing proteins. You can get them from fresh leafy green vegetables. You can get them from sea vegetables, which are sometimes 10 times more rich in minerals than the plant from the land. So These are very important things for people to know what to do to alkalize your body healthily. You can do it, but it takes habit patterns, learning the right habit patterns and unlearning the old ones, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Once the habit pattern becomes convenient for you, that's what you do. That's what your family does. And that saves you lots and lots of money and lots of pain for not doing it.
Yep.
Right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What follows fat on your list?
Well, you get your proper 3 and omega-6, and that helps your digestion because most of the nutrients are fat soluble.
Yep.
But they also help with the inflammation because the omega-3s turn into molecules in your body like DHA, and the omega-6 turns into GLA in your body. Both of those are highly anti-inflammatory molecules.
Interesting.
Right?
And everybody suffers from
this is not well understood, that good fats turn into molecules in your body that are some of the best antioxidants you're going to find.
That's interesting.
Right? Now, your good diet will help you also produce, superoxide dismutase and glutathione peroxide, which are the super antioxidants that your body makes that are way stronger than anything you can buy off the shelf.
Okay.
So if you look for foods that are the precursors to those molecules in your body, now your body becomes this healthy, youthful individual again, right? Like when you're young, you can do things because your body detoxifies everything and kicks it out, right? And so as we get older, we need to learn to support those same systems with nutrition. And that can be done, and it can be done better and more easily now than ever before because we have all these companies that know this and are trying to sell you their product. So we're kind of talking about antioxidants, and your body makes the most powerful antioxidants that you need to pretty much take care of everything to keep you youthful, provided, again, they have those essential nutrients and the supply line for those cells is kept intact. One thing that we need to understand is that as we get older, we should actively participate in a detoxification protocol.
Okay.
On a semi-annual or maybe even a quarterly basis.
Okay.
And we kind of alluded to that earlier with a fasting program, or even just skipping a meal here and there, making the right food choices, maybe just eating green salads for a week, or just drinking a green juice diet for a week. There's a lot of things that people can do.
What do you recommend? What do you highly encourage more than any of that for detoxification?
Well, the simplest thing is to learn to drink an herbal bitter tea.
Herbal bitter tea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because most cultures, we've kind of lost it in America as it is right now, but even in older ancient America, the Native Americans had teas that they would drink, and you go to England and you'll give me some Earl Grey tea somewhere. Right? You go.
Everyone drinks tea.
Yeah. So okay. So you go to South Africa, you might find some rooibos tea. You go to
so you're saying
the
that'll
Orient,
help a
the
lot.
green tea. Yeah, these are bitter tastes. And remember I mentioned about the stomach acid. Well, the bitter herbs in Chinese medicine are correlated with the stomach, because that's and the heart. They turn on the stomach acids, but they're correlated. The bitter flavors connected with the heart. Okay. And the heart's companion organ is the small intestine, which again is where all the nutrients are absorbed.
Okay.
So you nourish your heart and your small intestine with herbal bitters.
What is detoxifying and why is it important?
Okay, so we kind of talked about that. When you ingest food, your body goes into what would be called assimilation mode, which we kind of described earlier. Those 6 modes of getting a nutrient from outside in the world somewhere into your cell to become part of you, right? But the reverse process would be what we call the elimination function, which is really what happens when people do intermittent fasting, or when they just do a designed fast for a period of time, or do a master cleanse where they're drinking lemon juice and doing an herbal tea and doing the maple syrup program with the cayenne pepper. those are all programs. If you want better results or quicker results, just do the lemon juice and the cayenne pepper and the herbal tea and forget the maple syrup.
Gotcha.
Don't eat any food, but drink a lot of fluid, right? Dr. Christopher had a protocol that he is a great one for people to start with. If you don't have blood sugar issues, which a lot of people do, but if you do not have, if you're an athlete, it might be one that'd be appropriate. You just do pick one of the three: apple juice, a mix of citrus fruits, or orange juice. And that's all you have for 3 days.
Okay.
But you have a gallon of each one every day, plus a gallon of purified water every day. So you're drinking 2 gallons of fluid every day. So like every half hour, you're down in some.
You're chugging,
You're taking some fluids in your body, and you flush your system out.
And that's detoxifying the body.
That's very much so. It's a 3-day program that.
And what is a toxin exactly? Like on the basic level.
Okay, so.
And why do you want to get rid of it?
That's a great question, because if what we think of as a toxin may not be a toxin.
That's kind of what
it's what the cell is going to, how the cell's going to treat it is going to probably determine whether it's a toxin or not. You could have best food in the world, but if you have an argument with somebody and you pumped up your adrenaline, your cells are going to react differently than if you had a nice conversation with someone.
100%,
right? Yeah, or you went out with some friends for drinks or whatever, spent time with your girlfriend on the beach, or your boyfriend, in the mountains, whatever. A lot of these things are dependent on the stress versus distress and how it's impacting the cellular function. Okay, so a toxin is something that the way I think of it is look at it from the cellular level. When you put something in your body, whether you breathe it in, you drink it, or you eat it, or it's absorbed through your skin, or you hear it, because it also goes in as part of your vibration, right? The sound, the light, everything in the environment affects your being, okay? And that all resonates down to the cellular level. Okay, so something that's toxic is something that is detrimental. Something that would be healthful is something that would be beneficial. It's that simple, right? Same thing applies to the fats, right? Can your cells use those fats, or can they not use them, right? So when you put the substance in your body, let's take a simple example. You take a smoothie and stuff goes in, and most of it's good, but you put some bad oil in it unknowingly, right? Your body has to get rid of it because it's not something you can either burn for a fuel or use as a nutrient. Okay, so it has to eliminate it, or else it's going to get stored, and you don't want that.
What happens if it gets stored?
Your body has safety protocols. So if you eat too much sugar, like everybody does, the body takes the excess sugar and stores it as fat. On the detoxification protocol, we were talking about what is a toxin. A toxin is something that your cells basically cannot use as a fuel and burn it up for energy, or it cannot use as a nutrient, as one of the essential nutrients.
It's got to get rid of it.
Or building block or something, or use it in the best beneficial way.
If it doesn't get rid of it, is that what leads to disease and illness?
Well,
or is that part of it?
In herbal medicine, the old herbal books and a lot of the herbalists that I studied, there's only one disease.
Okay.
The disease is toxicity.
Okay.
Okay. Everything else is a description of that, or a symptom of that. But
that's okay. So you're saying toxicity. But
it's not just physical. It's also emotional and mental toxins that can accumulate in our aura and so forth. That's why I'm saying that this detoxification program is essential. It's really essential.
It's huge then, isn't it?
For everybody, whether they're an adult or not. Kids could do it too. If we were in some societies, they put kids through protocols in your home environment. Look at what the Aborigines did, how they treated their kids, and the programs they put them through, and they expose them to high levels of stress, and they adapt them to, they live to be healthy in their elderly years, right? And they're tuning into the spirit. right? So these are important things to learn here. In Europe, it's well known that people they take a whole summer off, or they take several weeks off in the summer because that's where they detox.
Yep.
Right. We need to learn to do that on a regular basis here. Ideally every quarter, do a once a week detox, fast once a week. There's all kinds of ways to do a detox. You can do it daily. You can get a sauna. You can get a steam room. You can detox in many different ways. Sweating is a very good way to get rid of some of the worst toxins in the body, which are the fat soluble.
Okay.
Udo, that I mentioned earlier, he developed a protocol, or worked with people that develop protocols for getting rid of fat soluble toxins, such as Agent Orange, which is one of the most virulent things from people that have been in the military.
It's back in the wartime.
And they can't detox through the normal pathways of liver and kidney because those molecules are so toxic it will damage those organs and kill them.
Interesting.
So they learn to sweat it out through the skin.
Okay.
But the body needs fats to sweat it out, because if you bring in the regular fats, it's not as effective. You need the essential fats to build the tissues, the membranes, and the structures. They're building block fats, whereas other fats are fuel fats. Okay.
Gotcha.
So the structure forming fats down to the cellular level are the omega-3 and the omega-6 and their derivatives. And now your cells can rebuild and kick out the bad substances. And now you're sweating it out through the skin, through a sauna, or sitting out in the sun, or however. And about 5% of your skin sweat can be fat. And so they might get a skin rash, but it will not kill the person who's got fat soluble toxins from pesticides or heavy metals and things like that.
Okay.
So these are important things for people, because as we know, disease is on the rise. And the reason for that would be, if you go back to the basic definition that I gave you earlier, only one disease, toxicity. The toxins are coming from the environment, but they're also coming from the foods we eat, the things that we think, the way that we feel about things. People need to learn to take control of their thoughts, feelings, spoken words, and actions.
So it's never been more important than ever to detox on a consistent basis, and mentally, physically,
on every level.
That's
so we're back to the spirit, right? If you don't have a strong spiritual connection, and you're suddenly confronted with the fact that you've got some issues of Alzheimer's coming into you or your family, what do you do? Because the doctors have answers, but it's not well known on how to deal with those issues right now. There are answers on the herbal side. There are answers on how to detox and get rid of the excess sugars and the glycation and so forth. And it's going to be the wave of the future, but if people are going to have to reach out and grab it and pull it, because it's not being promoted through the normal channels.
Okay.
Right. That's why your communication network here can be a very important avenue for people to learn from.
Yeah.
And so when you find it, research it, try it, find out who got results, what percentage results they got. What was the percentage of people that got better from a particular ailment? It's a good question to ask your physician. If I use this protocol you're recommending for me, what are the statistics on it, right? And then go to another practitioner and get a different alternative, and get 5 or 6 of them before you make a final choice in what you end up doing. That way you're giving yourself options. Maybe you do a combined approach, but in any case, you're empowering yourself to take charge of your own health, which is where people need to go, I think. And again, in the process of doing this, that's why you need the spiritual connection, because only the true spirit that you are is going to guide you in the right direction.
Okay.
Right?
What else is on your list? Well,
we kind of shortchanged the antioxidants, but I'll expand that a little bit in the oxygen therapies. So many of these things that we deal with can be addressed if we expose ourselves to oxygen therapies.
What is oxygen therapy?
Oxygen therapies would be things like hyperbaric chambers. Okay. There are products you can go buy at a health food store that will change your physiology for 48 hours by raising your oxygen levels.
Really?
Yeah. Most of them last a few hours. Some of them, however, will last 48 hours.
Yep.
You can come to my store. I'll show you what the difference is, right? You can get an ozonator for your house. You can get an ozonator that will put ozone in the water you just drank. You can switch to glass for your package that will not allow substances to combine in the water, because liquids mix with the container, and the polymers in plastics are not as stable as what glass is.
Yep.
Okay, or metal, but glass is the preferred container. Ask anybody. Here's a glass package. It's really fancy looking, and here's a fancy plastic package, and say, which is the better container?
Yeah, plastic's just cheaper. Yeah. Okay.
So you have a choice to refill your bottles and use, like I do, glass, or you can use the plastic. You have to be more careful when you carry it with you.
Yep.
But the point is, if you're that vigorous in whatever your activities are, get a metal one, get a stainless steel one.
Yep.
Right? So the point is, that's better than the plastic, for water. And it's also better for the environment, because you're using less environment.
So as far as the oxygen,
there's other protocols too. There's a lot of big push now for hydrogen therapy. There's depleted hydrogen, depleted what do they call it? Deuterium is one approach. Depleted deuterium is a hydrogen type therapy in water. But there's a hydrogen cycle and an oxygen cycle in our bodies, and we can enhance those with the right supplementation.
Okay.
And when you really all break it down into ions, which is what our bodies run on energy, positive, negative charges, what's at the base of it, beyond the protein and the fat, is the oxygen and the hydrogen.
Okay.
So there's where your real answers are, is getting to the basics, right? And the food you eat, for the most part, will give you the carbon that you need. And the oxygen and the nitrogen are coming also from the air. What's the air made of? It's 78% nitrogen. Okay. Right? So, long, deep breathing, the number one way to alkalize your body. Okay? Yeah, all the foods are great, and oxygen therapies are great, and the yoga is great, but the number one way, exercise is great. Number one way to alkalize your body in a relaxed state, long, deep breathing, and then have someone teach you what proper belly breathing is, so that you get full inhalations both in your gut and also in your chest.
Okay.
So that my yoga teacher taught us how to double our oxygen intake.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What else you got left on the list?
Well, we can expand on it pretty much in depth. I've kind of touched on most of the basics, but
just give me a quick
the number one thing, or the last thing, I'll put it. We talked about the number one thing. We've talked about the detoxification program, but everybody's unique, and everybody needs something different than other people. So that's where the customized nutrition comes in. I know of some people in Texas that have customized nutrition, and they will customize a formula for you.
Okay.
And if you want, you can get in touch with me. I can get in touch with them. We can get people on a customized nutrition program.
Like specifically to you.
Specifically for them. Because everybody has things that they may be reactive to that other people may not be reactive to, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But even on a more basic level, if you don't want to go that far with it, everybody needs a specific individual approach, because as an athlete, you need different nutrients than I need. And I'm an older individual, so I need different nutrients than someone who's younger. Yep. Someone who's pregnant or nursing needs different nutrient levels and different ratios of nutrients than someone else.
Absolutely.
Okay. But what's interesting through all of this is that my top 10 nutritional guidelines, when applied correctly, will solve all these problems to the extent that they can be solved from this side of life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just to kind of finish up with, talk to me about how important it is to take accountability in your own life and taking charge of your own health. Like, what are most people doing wrong these days?
Well, That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I know it's a pretty broad question, but
it's a broad question, but it's to the point, and it's probably very pertinent that someone has a good answer for it. I'll have to think about it to give you a better answer, but off the cuff, I would say that just take responsibility for everything in your life. Because
well said.
I had to do that at some point in my life when I got so much information when I was about 24, 25. I'm looking at this as going, I have all these answers, but there's all these problems. And, those people are not doing what needs to be done to solve those problems.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not within their ability to do it. I can make excuses for them, or I could also I could defer it onto someone else. But what it comes down to is, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about the fact that those people are not doing anything about it?
Okay, I like that.
Okay.
Rather than say problem, you're like, hey, how do I?
Okay, so how do I, if they're doing the wrong thing, and I know they're doing the wrong thing, and they know they're doing the wrong thing, how am I going to deal with that?
Okay.
Okay. So it all comes back to how are you going to deal with your life, and how am I going to deal with my life? And then when I'm dealing with my life, the theory would go like this, that when I'm dealing with my life to the best of my ability, with my spiritual connection, because I can tell you right off the bat that about that same time in my life, I had to decide that there was God, and that I had a connection with that God. And I believe strongly that that's why I'm still here. Okay? Because I see a lot of people that aren't here that had a lot more capability and opportunity back in those days than I did.
Yep.
Okay? So that guided me, and that strengthened my spirituality by making those three choices. There is a God, I have a connection with that God, and I'm have responsibility for everything that goes on in my life. I may not like what life is dealing with through me or however, but that's why I felt like I was dumped on. To a great degree, I could have looked at it that way, but I didn't. I chose not to look at it that way. I chose to look at it like I made some choices, and I'm not going to kick myself because I made those choices. I'm going to forgive myself, and I'm going to make better choices, because I believe there's a way that I believe that God gave each individual a spiritual beneficial destiny, whether that's in this life or some future life or in the next realm, whatever that next realm is. I believe we have a spiritual destiny because life created us, and God to me is the source of life. So if God created life, and life created you and me and everyone else, there's a destiny that's beneficial for life. Life is way smarter than any individual within life. I want to say nature's smarter than anything. You cannot outthink nature.
Yep.
You might outthink the rest of mankind, but you will not outthink nature, because you're using nature to think with. Right? Okay?
Is that's where the passion of giving back and helping other people comes from?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So because I'm in line with nature if I'm helping myself, that's the individual level. But I'm in line with nature even more if I'm trying to help someone else. Now I'm working on the collective level.
Gotcha.
And if enough people work, enough collectives work, because collectives are nothing more than a big individual, if you think about it. So really we have universal and individual. And that book I told you about that I was fortunate to find, there's a line in there, he quotes from another author. He says that there's a connection between, if you find the book and read the book, you can find out what the connection is between the universal and the individual. Because there's, you need that connection. We need that empowerment that only comes from the source, right? So like I try to read spiritual books a lot, and I do. And one of my favorites is the Bhagavad Gita. So I have several different translations of it, and I go through them, and I find out different perspectives from the different translators, and I look at But I don't just read it. I say, how can I apply this in my life? What's great is when I'm going through and I'm really trying to learn something else that's maybe off the topic of spirituality, and I don't know what to do, but the words come in. Whether it's from the Bible or whether it comes from the Bhagavad Gita, the words come through.
Okay.
The parable comes through. That, oh, that's the way I should look at it. That's the perspective I should take when I'm dealing with this, right? Not everybody is willing to take responsibility for everything in their life. But how can you do anything and be successful if you do not take responsibility? Because if you rely on someone else's success, they can pull the rug out from underneath you.
No,
right?
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Just, it kind of ties into this. Just to finish off is, how do you get someone to make something important enough so they take some type of action? So they don't become pre-diabetic, they don't have a
You don't have
heart
to do
attack.
it. No, I don't. Life does that.
Yeah, but I mean, what can you get across? Like, I mean, we just dumped so much knowledge on people. How do you put that in a simplistic term? Like, you need to take control. You need to take control today, because there's a good chance you're going to die.
So this is why all the great masters say you need a master to guide you through it. I mean, I'm talking about a true master who's really connected with the source. Okay, or find your own. I developed my own protocol. Out of what I told you a few minutes ago, I developed my own philosophy, basically.
Yeah.
And I still use it today. For the most part, I was fortunate, or I was guided, however you want to look at it, or both, that has worked for me for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
Right. So there are good techniques and there are great techniques, and there are. You need to find the one that works for you for now, but be willing to go to higher levels later on.
Okay.
You know, in the Qigong teacher that I took from locally, you know, he was very, very profound in, he wanted you to learn from him, and he'd like you to be exclusive, but he was willing for you to go out and expand your knowledge in other horizons. Okay. Learn from other teachers. Learn from where you can. Integrate it into your own life. If you just become a follower, how will you ever become a leader? You have to learn to become a leader. So you learn to follow, then you learn to teach, and then you, in the process of teaching, you can learn to become a master. So there's, you know, the learning, there's the teaching, but there's becoming the master of anything takes a whole other level of dedication. And fundamental to that is accountability and responsibility. If you do not know something and you recognize that you do not know something, now you're responsible for either letting it go on for your not knowing or taking the next step to learn.
100%.
Okay?
Yeah.
You have to go on and learn what you do not know. Because the saying goes, people say they don't know what they do not know.
Yeah.
Right? Well, to some extent that's true, but you can take a guess at it and take us, you know, go look at all the disciplines and pick out one that you like and make that your hobby. I was on a spiritual group tour one time, and we stayed overnight in Las Vegas, I think it was. I was living in another state. We came through Las Vegas, I think. And the people we stayed with, they taught us different things, and that was just like a one-night thing, and we moved on. But I always remembered this one thing is, he said, learn a hobby. So I would tell everybody, find a hobby that's something you like to do, and you may have to learn about how to become good at it, but it's something that you really have desire for. And it's not a profession. It's not something you do for money. It's something that you do because you like to do it.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's a struggle for me.
And it's not just recreation.
Yeah.
Okay? So I like to read, so reading is a hobby for me.
Gotcha.
But I also developed a number of hobbies. I happened to live next to a guy, and he was a school teacher when I lived in San Diego. And he had about 10 hobbies, and he was really into cactus, and he was really into all kinds of different, he was a mathematics teacher, but he had all kinds of things about mathematics that he studied. And he had all kinds of collections. He had bottle collections, and it was just going all these different directions. I was like, I don't want that many hobbies.
Yeah.
But he had a number of hobbies, and he's a good friend of mine, and I learned from him.
Yeah.
So learn something as a hobby, and it gives you a diversion from the rest of your life. That's why it's important. It's a way to de-stress.
Yeah, that's what came to mind. I can think de-stress coming here.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we've done it for today.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest, that was like heavy and hard to follow, but it was very informative, and it's the type of thing you'd probably go back to as a reference.
Well, I was hoping it'd be an introduction, so maybe we can
there's a million things we should touch on.
Of that, and then I can actually do. I expected you to kind of focus maybe in on the digestive section, and we gave that a pretty good
try to give
play.
that broad spectrum, but I definitely would like to get back in that gut health. And
we'll do that, or we can pick out antioxidants sometime and do that, or like I said, don't talk to me about fats. I'll get Udo to come in and let him give.
Yeah,
you learn it right from the master.
Yeah,
and maybe I'll be in one with you if you want. Help you design the questions or whatever. But you pick a topic that we discussed tonight, and we can laser in on it for more detail.
I will hold you to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.